The procedure I'm going to show you for making fire is a survival procedure. It's not fast, but it always works, and it'll work in any part of the world, anywhere you are. But before we can do this, we need to know a little bit about some woods tools, because you're going to need three things to make fire: a knife, an axe of some sort, and a saw. But wait, let's just back up for a minute. In a wooded area like you see here, there's so much dead wood around that it's pretty easy to make a fire. You've got dry leaves, you've got all sorts of down, dry, dead wood, it's no problem. But if you go to places like the Boundary Waters Canoe Area, Quetico Superior Provincial Park, and virtually all your national parks and forests and things, in places where you are allowed to make fires, all the good wood has been picked over. I say that again. All the good wood has been picked over. You're not going to find stuff like this lying around. You're going to have to start out with a log, and you're going to have to cut the heart out of a dead, dry log. And friends, you're not going to do that with a Swiss Army knife. Let's begin with the knife. You can choose a fixed blade knife or a folding knife. Your preference. I like them both. I use them both. But my preference tends to run to a fixed blade. Why? Because with a proper sheath, which I make myself, it's a quick, easy in, quick, easy out, and there's nothing to close or deal with. Secondly, because the blade is rigid, we can pound on the spine of the knife with a wood block. We're going to have to do this in order to split out kindling. If you choose a folding knife, be sure that you get one with a lock, so that when you pound on the top, you'll see how we do this in a minute, when you pound on the top, the blade won't close and cut your fingers. This particular knife happens to have what's called a liner lock. It's just a piece of steel that runs right down the liner of the knife and intersects the blade so that it can't close on your hand. Very simple, rather inexpensive, and quite effective. If you have to cut the heart out of a dead dry log to get kindling, you're not going to do it with a Swiss Army knife. You need some sort of splitting tool. For that you need an axe. Now axes come in all huge variety of sizes and shapes, but you don't need a big axe. In my travels in northern Canada, if I'm going through very little travel terrain, places where I may have to actually make portages or clear portages, then I would probably go with a 3/4 length axe like you see here. But the rest of the time, I get by just fine with a hatchet. Now, whichever axe you choose, whichever knife you choose, the rule is it should be sharp. You want to be able to get a very high edge on your knife. Any knife should be able to do that. And any axe should be able to do that. Razor sharp, ready to go. You're going to need a saw in order to cut pieces of wood to size so that you can split them with your hand axe. I've assembled 3 very good saws. Each one's a little different. Let's take a minute and probe the differences between them. First, some basic rules. The longer the blade, the easier the saw will cut. So you may like short blades because they look handy and because they're very light, but the longer the cutting surface, the less hard you're going to have to work. Keep that in mind if you're going to be cutting a lot of wood. Next, I want you to notice the difference between these 2 basic blade designs. The one on your left has all teeth. The one on the right has both teeth and a funny looking structure here, which is called a raker. There are 4 cutters and 1 funny looking structure, rakers. Now rakers don't cut, rakers rake. The purpose of a raker is, if you're cutting in green wood or resinous wood, the wood tends to gum up the kerf of the saw. So you put in this little raker here to just literally shove the chips, shove the sawdust out through the saw kerf. The rakers don't cut, they rake. This is the best style blade if you're going to build a cabin from green trees. If you're going to cut green trees and saw green wood, you probably want a saw with rakers. But hey, have you ever seen a carpenter saw with rakers? Of course not, because carpenters are cutting dead, dry wood. Clue, so are you. The point is, you don't need rakers on a wood saw. You need cutters on a wood saw. If these two blades are the same length, and this saw has one raker for every 4 cutters, that means that 1/5 of the blade is useless as far as cutting. This style blade will cut 20% faster than this style blade. So we need 3 tools, a sharp knife, a sharp hand axe, and a saw. We're ready to make this fire. Making the fire. Scenario. It's been raining miserably for 2 weeks now. Every depression is a pond, every leaf is a pool. Every piece of wood is soaking wet. What to do? We go back into the woods and we look for a dead down tree. Dead and down for 2 reasons. One, because we don't cut green wood and because it wouldn't burn anyway. And number 2, any wood that is down on the forest floor in touch with the ground will attract microorganisms and critters and is apt to be rotten. So we want some standing wood about like what you see over here. We're going to go to this with our saw, and we're going to cut off a piece about 1 foot long. Just 1 foot long. Okay. Once you've cut the first chunk of log off, you perform 2 tests. I call them the cheek and lips test. The cheek test is like this. Simply take the end of the log and hold it up against your cheek and see if it feels wet or damp. If it doesn't, I go to the lips test. I just put it against my lips and smell it at the same time. Now I know this sounds a little hokey, but the fact is your nose will immediately pick up any damp smells. Your cheek, your lips will feel any dampness in the wood. In all likeliness, in a log this thick, and this is about a 3-inch diameter log, the center should be bone dry. There may be a little ring of water around the outside that goes in 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch, but beyond that, the rest of this should be dry. If it's dry, you can keep cutting up these sections until you have about 12 of them to take back with you. And oh yes, if you use this piece, don't forget to cut a chunk off the other side, because the side that was out naturally is going to be soaking wet. So we want to cut off about 12 pieces 1 foot long, and then we will cut off 1 more piece that's about 2 feet long. And we'll see how to use that section in just a minute. We're now ready to build a fire. The rule of thumb is that tinder is the highly flammable stuff that you're going to light your match, strike your match, and start your fire. The rule of thumb is that tinder should be no thicker than the thickness of a match. That means we have to split this out so that the wood in here is no thicker than the thickness of a match. It's now time to use the axe. Now anytime you take an axe and you start flailing away, no matter how good you are, somebody stands a chance of getting hurt. Most likely you. The method I'm going to show you for using the axe is very safe. I've used it with all the groups that I guide all over North America. I've used it with teenagers for years, and I've never had an accident. We want to establish some sort of a flat base. Usually you can just split a section of log or cut out a little notch in it and stand this on end like so. Then we're going to take our hatchet and we're going to stick it right on the center. Now if you have a friend to help you, you'll hold the hatchet with both hands while a friend pounds the head on through. If you don't, well, you're just going to have to do it yourself. Start it, and here we go. Okay, well that looks like that split 3 times. I'll split it again. Now eventually we're going to get to the point where we want to split very, very tiny stuff. You can continue to split by pounding if you like, or you can stand it on end and you don't want to do that. What you want to do is take a keeper stick and hold the keeper stick on the side and just come down on it and split like that. So you keep splitting until you can get as small as you want, until pretty soon it's going to be hard even hitting this with the axe using a keeper stick. Okay, then it's time to go to the knife. Let's go to the knife. I'll set the knife up like so, And I don't need as heavy a pounding stick, so I'll use this one here. And I'll pound the knife on through. Now I'm going to keep making smaller and smaller. Remember, tinder can be no thicker than the thickness of a match. Now this is why you want a knife with either a locking blade or one that you can pound on the back. When you get a bunch of this stuff done, you have to create tinder. Remember, tinder can be no thicker than the thickness of a match. What you're going to do then is you're going to just take one of the bigger sticks that you've cut, and you'll take a knife and you're going to begin to cut shavings. Now, if you've ever watched somebody try to cut shavings, what they do is they do this. They have a very difficult time cutting nice shavings. I'm going to show you a little different way to use your knife. Take your knife and turn it backwards so that the blade is pointing up your arm. Lock that blade into your hip. The blade is locked into my hip. I then take my stick and I stick it underneath the knife. Stick under the knife. Then using these very powerful muscles of my arms, I'm going to wrench across like this, and I'm going to create man or woman-sized shavings here. Here we go. Watch them fly. Look at how fast you can make them. Just keep turning the stick. That's probably enough. That's about a minute's worth of shavings. Now let's collect them and put everything in order. Building the fire. I've assembled all my fire-making wood here. Remember, tinder should be no thicker than the thickness of a match. These were the shavings we cut just a second ago. Next to the shavings, I've also made a couple of what woodsmen call fuzz sticks. This really isn't necessary, but it's just a classy way to ensure your fire will go on the first match. You just shave some little shavings off the side of a couple of sticks, and you have your fuzz sticks. Some people actually make fuzz sticks ahead of time, put them in a plastic bag, and carry them along on their trips as a quick, fast method of getting tinder to start their fires. Then I have a little bit bigger kindling over here, finally to bigger stuff over here. Now I really don't need anything bigger than this at this time. I want to get the fire going, then I can worry about piling on what we call fuel, which is very big stuff indeed. Now I'm going to talk as I work. Smoke is nature's way of saying you're smothering me. The object of the game is to build a smoke-free blaze. I'm going to begin by placing 3 support sticks across a base. Now this is a parallel base. The wind is actually hitting me in the back of the head right now, so it's going to be blowing through my fire this way. If I light my fire on this end, my fire should take off in this direction. Here's 1 support stick, 2 support sticks, and 3 support sticks. Now the support sticks are placed just far enough apart to support the tinder. You want a relatively small tinder box. When I teach this, I tell people to take a thumb and middle finger and make an O. That's the size of your tinder box. In other words, when you light the match is going to ignite a very small area, about the size of a dime. There's no sense in spreading your tinder box out wide. Beginners do that. They make these huge tinder boxes. The match is only going to ignite a very small spot. A tinder box the size of roughly a silver dollar is big enough. When I place the O over my 3 support sticks, you'll see that that is about the size I want. Next rule. If you put wood on a fire, pieces of wood on a fire, parallel to one another, it will produce a chimney effect and create a draw. So everything we put on the fire, we want to put side by side, parallel to one another. We can do a number of shavings this way, then we'll go back the other way. Now an experienced fire builder at this point would probably just heap these shavings on top in a big ball and throw the match underneath, and away it would go. But hey, this is a survival fire, and we are assuming we only have 1 match, and it better count. Remember, the shavings are very small, no thicker than the thickness of a match. If you run into one that's a little thick, no big deal. We can just cut it down a little bit and thin it out. There's a little thinner one now. You cannot have tinder that is too thin. but you can certainly have tinder that's too thick. I'm going to go back and forth on this, and I'm building up my tinder box to a thickness of about 1/2 inch. The rule of thumb is anything you set on a fire, when you set 2 pieces of wood parallel to each other on a fire, you must be able to see light between them. If you don't see light between them, you're going to wind up with a smoky blaze. Now that's probably enough shavings at this point, but you can see already a wind is picking up and it threatens to blow my shavings away. I'm going to have to lock them in place. To do that, I'm going to bridge over the top. I'm going to take a stick here, and let's see, here's another fairly chunky stick. I'll put that there. This is going to form a bridge over the top. Then I think I'm going to start with my 2 fuzz sticks, and I'll bridge across with the fuzz sticks. Bridging across again here with the fuzz sticks. I think I'll put them the other way. Easy to light. Okay. Again, they should not be touching. You want to see light between everything you put on a fire. I'll put another pretty thin stick right across to bridge. And here's another thin stick right across the bridge. And now I can go just a little bit thicker across the other way. I'll go 1 across here, 1 across here. Now I'm leaving about 1/4 inch of space between each one of these things that I'm putting on the fire. And you know what? I think that's enough for now. But wait, before I begin, I want to get all my shavings together over here, because I'm going to need these shavings as soon as my fire starts. We'll see what we do with those in just a second. I want some real small, thin shavings. We are now ready to light the fire. First, know where you're going to put the match before you put it there. We're going to light directly underneath this platform. This is going to create heat that's going to go straight up. Everybody knows that heat goes up, not sideways. We're going to find a convenient place to put the match. If I can't get in here this way, I'll move something aside and get in here. In fact, I think I'm going to light it right from the side, right under here. Experiment with an unlit match. Know where you're going to put the match before you put it there. Go immediately from the striker to the fire. Striker to the fire. And here we go. Now once you get it started, hold it in one place. Don't move it around. Just hold it for as long as you can, and it will soon begin to take flame. You've made the commitment. Hold it there until it starts. Give it a chance, let it go. Now, as soon as I see flame, I'm taking these little shavings that I had saved, and they're going right into the heart of the flame. I want to help this along as much as I can to really get this thing rolling. They're going to go right into the heart of the flame right now. Keep using up all these good shavings. Don't start piling wood on this thing. You're not ready for wood yet. You're not ready for big wood yet. You want to keep up with this very, very fine kindling. Now notice what a nice bright fire we're getting here. And the reason why we're not getting any smoke is because we have a draft. In fact, I'm putting my hand literally under the fire right now. This is very similar to working on a Weber kettle. And here we go. We have a hot, bright fire. Now once we get to this point, this fire is on its way. It's simply a matter of now adding bigger stuff and allowing the fire to take off. And that's all there is to it. Let's summarize the important skills for making fires. Clear the ground 3 feet around your fire site before you begin. Avoid overhanging trees. Choose dead downed wood. Use your axe and knife to split thick wood into thin pieces. Tinder should be no thicker than a match. Leave some space between sticks you place on a fire. Have plenty of dry wood available before you strike the match. Keep your fire small for efficient warmth and controlled cooking. Ask any newcomer to wilderness camping what he or she fears most about the outdoors. You'll probably hear bugs, bears, and bad weather. Battling bugs is mostly a matter of doping up, covering up, and hardening your attitude. Bears, on the other hand, are usually more smoke than fire. But storms, wind-driven rain, these are components of every wilderness experience, from Florida to the high Arctic. If you can rig a dry camp and make a cheery fire in any weather, you'll survive. No, you'll thrive, and you'll be a big hero to your friends. Admittedly, some of the techniques you've seen in this video clash with accepted ways. Example, placing the ground cloth inside your tent rather than under the floor. Good. Old ideas, bad old ideas, die hard. Remember that when your camping friends question your new ways. The bottom line is that these methods work everywhere, anywhere, every time. I guarantee it. May the wind be at your back as you explore new places, and may you care enough to preserve the wild and wilderness for all who follow.